Evil. To be profoundly immoral and wicked. There are, on average, 1.3 million violent crimes in the U.S. annually, 800,000 assaults, 90,000 rapes, and 15 to 20,000 murders. Murderers are not monsters, they're men. And that's the most frightening thing about them. Alice Sebold. Megan, a licensed mental health professional, and her husband, Paul, a police officer, sit down to examine and discuss the nature, the impact, and most importantly, the origins of evil.
Good evening, fellow murderites. I'm Paul Braun.
And I'm Megan Braun.
And this is The Origins of Evil, a podcast about nefarious nincompoops neutralizing nice folks and what makes them tick. How you doing, Meg?
Well, it's been a rough couple of weeks.
I can't possibly fathom what you could be referencing. Is it the impending threat of World War III? Kanye West's continue the horrible treatment of his ex-wife and mother of his children?
I mean, yes, that's
It's about the case that we're
relevant.
doing, isn't it?
Oh my God, this case is awful. I'm just warning.
Yeah, who the fuck recommended this one?
So we have to thank my sister Amanda.
Amanda, you bitch.
Yeah, this case is awful. It's heartbreaking. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
It took me just so long to get through it. Oh my God. Oh, just wow.
Yeah, some of you might notice we are actually uploading this a whole week late. That is a little bit both of our fault on that one. I decided to go to work a couple extra days. Poor choice. Very poor choice for various reasons. If you live locally and you watch the news, you'll know why that was a poor choice.
And I sometimes have difficulty managing my ADHD. So that is another reason why this episode is a week late. And then to top it all off, last night, Paul had the audacity to make sloppy joes for dinner, which I hate. He had one job, make something for dinner,
One job.
but to not ask or tell me what it was. And he chose the one thing in my brain that I put out into the universe, and I said, God, I hope it's not sloppy joes. I just had the thought.
Just for perspective, I hadn't made it in a solid 2 months, and the last time I made it, with ground turkey, by the way, you're welcome, because she eats very difficult with what kind of meat she eats. You said you liked it last time I made it, so this is your fault. I don't like to victim blame, but if the meat is on the sandwich, you cannot bitch.
What?
I was trying to do a play on the glove doesn't fit and you must have quit. I just came up with that on top of my head. I'm sorry. There's a reason that I went into policing and not a more creative endeavor. So what have we been up to? We watch anything good? We can consume any fun content besides the research for this horrific case?
I don't think so. I don't. Oh, wait, we saw Batman. Batman was good.
Batman was good. It was good. For a bunch of horrible, liberal, anti-white propaganda, he said, sarcastically, because that is a terrible read on that film. You know who you are, person who put that out into the ether. No, it was a really good movie. I liked it. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I did too. You did not feel the 3 hours that it was, so.
No. And there was just something in the way.
You're losing me on all these.
The song that they play 100 goddamn times, the Nirvana song, it's literally
paying attention to the song.
How could you not? They played it literally 4 times in the movie.
I don't remember. It's out. It's out of my head.
This is why Dave Grohl won't retext my calls.
Retext your calls?
Yeah. I was hoping that we could just move past it. Return my texts, return my calls. Listen, I am very tired. But we're gonna do this. I got my glass of milk. I got my thing of Dunkers from Trader Joe's. You have your glass of wine because you're an adult.
No, the wine isn't good. It's definitely bad. There's chunks in it. there should not be chunks in red wine. I'm no wine connoisseur or
You're not a sommelier.
but
Ooh. We took the class too, so you should know something.
yeah, I'm like, what is this debris just hanging out in my glass?
Hey, remember when we went to the wine
It
tasting
is
for our wedding?
Jingle Hallmark wine, though. Yeah. So
remember when we went to the wine tasting for our wedding and got just absolutely trashed? And there were like several other adult couples.
It was a tasting. I didn't want to waste anything.
No, we don't bring spit buckets. We live dangerously. We only have 2 children we're responsible for. And on that note, let's just jump right into it. So, Megan, you're presenting this week's case.
Yes. So, at the urging of my sister, Amanda, who said, you have to present this case. You have to present this case. I decided, fine, I will do the research and watch this case. Before I discuss the case, I just want to give a quick little shout out to Mary. Mary from our true crime Facebook group, who noticed. You were the only person who noticed that we didn't have an episode last week. So thank you for caring, Mary.
Yeah,
you're a good person.
That was a very sweet comment that you said.
This
really.
episode is for you because I was definitely going to ask Paul to push it another week. And then when I saw that, I said, I can't disappoint Mary. I can't do it. So here we are, 10:48 p.m. on Wednesday night recording this. You're welcome. This case, I'm just going to start with the trigger warnings because I got to warn you guys up front. We're going to be talking about the abduction, sexual assault, and murder of a child. So if you want to listen to another episode or another podcast altogether, because now that I'm thinking about the other episodes, there's like maybe 1 or 2 you can listen to.
I think we have a whole 2 episodes that don't involve children getting murdered.
Yeah, well, one child survives.
Yeah, but she got stabbed 19 times.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, if that's a red flag for you, please feel free to listen to something else. This episode is Daddy's Girl, the murder of Riley Fox. Melissa Rossi noticed Kevin Fox at a volleyball game in high school. She boldly approached him after the game and asked him to homecoming. Kevin, who was a little on the shy side, said yes. After that day, the two became your typical high school sweethearts and were inseparable. When Melissa was 18 and Kevin 20, their lives took an unexpected turn when they found out they were pregnant. Kevin, who was in college at the time, was overwhelmed by this news at first. The couple ended up splitting up for a short amount of time before Kevin, realizing that he wanted to be with Melissa and in his child's life, dropped out of school and moved into a home with Melissa in Wilmington, Illinois. They welcomed their son Tyler a few months later. In the year 2000, Kevin and Melissa got married. 1 year later, on March 31st, 2001, they welcomed their daughter Riley. Riley was described as a spunky, sassy little girl that would make your heart melt. Both Melissa and Kevin were described by friends and family to be incredibly doting parents. However, the relationship between Kevin and Riley was truly something special. In fact, when many of Riley's loved ones think of her, they think of her on Kevin's shoulder. One final memory the family shares of Riley is during her Uncle Chad's wedding. Chad is Kevin's brother. Riley was the flower girl, and apparently she was very particular about her dress. She would only select a dress that she could twirl and do pliés in. Anyway, during the ceremony, Riley was supposed to walk down the aisle and then turn to the right, meeting her mother in a pew. Instead, Riley walked straight down the aisle and right up to the altar where her father was, jumping into his arms. The family photos taken with Riley at Chad's wedding would be the last before her death just 2 weeks later.
Oh, it always sucks when something like this horrible thing happens like close or like tangentially to like a really positive family event, because I feel like it just taints everything around it.
Yeah.
Not like the that Chad would be selfish and be like, oh man, my niece getting murdered really ruined my wedding anniversary, but like it's just like a thing that it's gotta suck. Like, how can you look back on that day and think of anything other than
this is the last time that we were able to celebrate with Riley, and she was just so adorable during this event.
And so little. How old was she?
She's 3.
3? Yikes.
Yeah, and just like some of the pictures from the wedding, it's just so sad knowing that those are like her last photos and like the last family photos. It's just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So it's Saturday, June 5th, 2004, my 14th birthday. I asked my parents if they purchased me that Echo Red shirt and Nike Air Force Ones I asked for as birthday gifts. They laugh as I unwrap a shirt from the classic Kohl's clothing line, So, and a pair of knockoff Nike sneakers from Walmart. Upset, I locked myself in my room and listened to Ashley Simpson's new album, Autobiography, on my CD player.
Oh, so this is before she tanked her career with that SNL lip syncing scandal?
Yes, this is when she was up and coming and like
Yeah.
she had that show on MTV.
Totally famous for being not just Jessica Simpson's sister.
Listen, she could sing.
Could she?
I thought she could. I mean, I was 14.
I don't think she thought she could. Hence the lip syncing incident. But some people never forget, all right? First Milli Vanilli, then Ashley Simpson.
Who's next?
Who's next?
Everyone that performed at the Super Bowl.
I'm looking at you, Harrison Styles. You beautiful woman.
God.
I'm kidding. He's a surprisingly decent actor.
While I'm being a bratty teenager on the East Coast of the country, the Foxes are looking forward to a fun weekend to be had. Melissa is in Chicago for the weekend with some friends for a breast cancer walk. Kevin has a concert later that day with Melissa's brother and a friend, also in Chicago. Tyler and Riley are excited to spend some time with their grandmother, Sandy, Melissa's mom, that day. Kevin plans to pick the kids up from Sandy's after the concert, go home, rest, and leave the next day for Chicago so the kids can see their mom cross the finish line. Around 1:30 a.m., Kevin arrives to Sandy's house to pick up the kids. His brother-in-law recommends that he just leaves the kids. However, Kevin wants to bring them home so he can leave early for Chicago. When Kevin arrives home, he, along with his kids, are exhausted. Instead of going through the process of placing them in their beds, Kevin puts Tyler on an ottoman in the living room and Riley on the couch. He goes into his bedroom, watches TV, goes out for a smoke, and then goes to bed. Around 8:30 a.m. on Sunday, he is awoken by Tyler, who claims Riley is gone. Kevin searches the house and asks his neighbors if they have seen her, to which they tell him they have not. After 30 minutes of looking for Riley himself, Kevin calls the non-emergency 911 line. Police try to reassure Kevin not to panic and tell him that children who wander off are often difficult to find at first, but are found. Soon after police arrive, Kevin receives a call from Melissa, who is still unaware that all of this is happening. Kevin breaks down on the phone and tells Melissa he can't find Riley. Melissa and her friend immediately leave Chicago and head for Wilmington. As the town catches wind of Riley's disappearance, more and more people start showing up to help in the search, as well as provide food and water. Kevin informs police and the townspeople that Riley was last seen wearing a white shirt with a flamingo on it and pink capri pants. Chad actually learns of Riley's disappearance when a friend of his, watching the Cubs game, called him to tell him that an Amber Alert for Riley Fox was on the teleprompter. Chad immediately leaves to go to his brother. Around 3 p.m., Christine Lopez, a resident of Wilmington, is searching Forsyth Woods with her daughter. Down by the creek, she notices an object that appears to be a plastic bag floating in the water. As she gets closer to the creek, she realizes that this is not a plastic bag at all, but the body of Riley Fox, lying face down in the water. She calls the police, who arrive within minutes. As crime scene investigators arrive at the scene, they observe that Riley has a light bruise on her head and her mouth has duct tape placed over it. Her wrists had duct tape residue on them, leading investigators to believe that she had been bound. Most devastating of all, Riley is missing her underwear and pants. An autopsy would later reveal that she had been sexually assaulted and died by drowning. As the anxiety between Kevin and Melissa starts to build, police approach them and usher them into separate police cars. Both are taken to the Will County Sheriff's Department, where they are placed in separate rooms. For 45 minutes, both Melissa and Kevin are questioned by police before being reunited and joined by Kevin's father, brother, and sister-in-law. At this point, the Foxes receive the absolute worst news a parent could receive. Their sweet baby Riley had been found dead. On June 12, 2004, Riley Fox is laid to rest. Over 6,000 people show up to pay their respects at her funeral, which took place at St. Rose Catholic Church. Riley is buried in her princess dress that she adored, the one she wore to her uncle's wedding. Guests adorn their clothing with pink ribbons, ties, and butterfly pins. News crews are there to capture the overwhelming community support for the Foxes. Police are also there to keep an eye out for possible suspects. In fact, 2 detectives are filming who they believe is responsible for Riley's death. Her father, Kevin Fox.
I can't imagine being him and just the Monday morning quarterbacking of every single decision that he had to make to put her in that room, in that bed at that time.
Yeah, it's awful. And when you think about it as a parent, like, it makes sense. I get it. When you get home late, you're exhausted, the kids are asleep, you don't want to have to wake them to put them to bed again, you know, leaving them on the couch in the living room, and they didn't have a big house. It's not like he was like far away down some corridor where he couldn't get to them. It's not a big deal. You know, there's no way he could have known that this was going to happen. There just isn't.
Unless he's the one who did it.
Unless he's the one who did it, yeah.
Dun, dun, dun.
So before we continue with the rest of the story, let's talk about the evidence police have collected during this case. Upon retrieving Riley's body by the creek, police survey the area and locate a pair of muddy white sneakers floating in the creek. One of the shoes has the initials EBY etched inside.
Wait, they find 2?
Yeah.
An entire pair of shoes.
An entire pair of shoes. They find one in like one location, and then as they look further down the creek, they find the other pair.
I mean, that's weird, right?
Yeah. That's and during the 2020 episode of this case, you know, one of the investigators say like that's just highly unlikely, like that never happens. Riley's clothes, the duct tape across her mouth, and a rape kit that is later performed is sent to the FBI for forensic testing. When police initially arrive to the Fox's home after receiving Kevin's call, they walk around and observe things that would be expected given the statement Kevin provides them with. There are toys scattered throughout various rooms in the house, a poster on the kitchen table that Tyler and Riley made for Melissa as they planned to cheer her on at the end of the breast cancer walk, and a yellow blanket on the couch where Kevin reports placing Riley to sleep the night prior. Also observed by police is the back door, which appears to be unlocked. Kevin explains to police that the lock is broken and therefore can't be locked.
So the back door cannot be locked.
No, the lock is broken. It can be closed, but it can't be locked.
So anyone could just open it.
Yeah. The same day of Riley's disappearance, police are also called to the residence of one of the Fox's neighbors. The neighbor reports that she believes someone broke into her house. Although she denies anything being taken, she reports that one of her window screens had been cut out and her front door was unlocked. In addition to this break-in, other residents on the block report seeing an unfamiliar vehicle driving around that night, a red Chevy Beretta. Could this break-in and strange car be connected to Riley's disappearance?
Well, I mean, the only way to know is to do some investigating. They should probably look into that because that's, you know.
Well, according to the police, no.
No.
Police rule out the sighting of the red Beretta as credible and inform the public there is no car description affiliated with the possible subject at this point in time.
Okay. Not sure why you would do that, but sure. Okay, fine. Maybe they know something we don't know yet.
I just wanted to list the evidence before I continued with the rest of the story because, as I said, it's crucial to everything that is about to transpire.
Okay. So really quick, so we have DNA from the rape kit.
And her clothes.
Along with possible DNA on the duct tape. Mm-hmm. The 2 shoes that had, which 3 letters could be an initial, mm-hmm. And you also get like shoe size and footprints off that. Yeah. And so that's good, like physical evidence. Mm-hmm. You have to take into account that the back door doesn't lock. break-in that happened, did you say across the street?
Across the street,
like
yeah.
literally across the street.
Literally the house across the street.
The same night.
Yes.
Okay, that's something you got to look into. And sightings of a red
Chevy Beretta, which none of the residents definitely called it Beretta before.
That's fine.
Many of the residents on that block said it's unfamiliar.
I certainly hope that the authorities thoroughly look into and take into account the totality of all of that evidence that we just discussed.
Sure. With that being said, we're picking up the story about an hour after the funeral. So about an hour after Riley's funeral, Colleen Hansen, a friend of Melissa's who attended the services, is visited by police. Police ask Colleen a couple of questions about Riley and the Fox family, all which seem par for the course. They then ask Colleen if she believes that Kevin could have done this to his daughter, to which she responds, absolutely not. The police thank Colleen for her time and leave. A few days later, Melissa and Kevin receive a call from police asking if they could interview Tyler in an attempt to jog his memory or to see if there is something he remembers from the night Riley disappeared that he may not feel comfortable talking to Kevin or Melissa about. So they agree to this. This next part is absolutely infuriating, so just get ready.
Yeah, I have some thoughts.
16 days after the death of his sister, Tyler is interviewed by Mary Jane Pluth, the Will County Child Advocacy forensic interviewer. Mary Jane does nothing to ease Tyler into the interview or build rapport with him. She asks him the same questions over and over again. Did you see your dad carry Riley outside? Did he take her out for just a little bit? Is that when your dad took Riley outside? It's okay if you saw your dad take Riley outside. 168 times. Tyler is asked if his father took Riley outside or had anything to do with her disappearance. 168 times, Tyler says no. Tyler is visibly upset and shaken throughout this interview, at one point pulling his hoodie over his face to avoid looking at Mary Jane. Detective Ed Hayes from the Will County Sheriff's Department, who would later be the lead detective on this case, was present on the other side of a two-way glass and does nothing to intervene during the interview. Finally, after Tyler is sobbing, Mary Jane, in a very matter-of-fact and almost disappointed manner, ends the interview. After this police interview with Tyler, Chad is convinced that the police are focusing on Kevin.
Okay. Now, it's no secret that I'm a law enforcement professional. And there is this concept out there that there is this thin blue line and we don't cross it and yada, yada, yada. So with all that being said, Mary Jane Pluth, MJ, if you're listening to this, fuck you. You're a piece of shit. Not only are you a piece of shit, you're bad at your job. You're a bad fucking interrogator. Like, the fact that you work for a child advocacy group, insanity. Absolute insanity. Because what I saw in that fucking interrogation was shameful. You should not have the job that you have. Fucking newsflash. If you're interrogating somebody and they say that something didn't happen 168 times and you finally get them to crack on the 169th, what do you think any defense attorney worth their salt is going to say? Oh, okay, so the one time they said the thing that you liked, that we're going to believe, and we're going to ignore the other 168 times they told you it didn't happen that way. You're just badgering a child and hoping that you get what you want out of them. Fuck you. That's my thoughts on that.
Yeah. The interview is
it's
absolutely
maddening.
Terrible and just so unnecessary. And
this
just to watch this kid cry.
Died, and you're making him hysterically cry. It's one of the worst things we've seen.
And also making him feel like he knows something that he's not sharing with you.
Yeah. Making it sound as though he's complicit in her death in some capacity. Awful. I'm sorry that the audience just had to hear some genuine umbrage from me, but I just, nah.
Yeah. Watch, I think it was 2020 season 43 episode 24. We're going to put the link
as always,
in the
we're gonna
notes
have all
and the sources.
Yeah, all the sources.
But it's called The Accused, and you see clips of this, and it's just horrific. It's just absolutely horrific. At this point, police are regularly dropping by the Fox home. One detective in particular, Scott Swearingen, often plays football with Tyler during his visits and even has coffee with Kevin's parents. When urged by family members to hire an attorney, Kevin and Melissa decline. Melissa and Kevin seem to think that this is all just par for the course and that detectives are being friendly and supportive of them. They feel they have nothing to worry about because they have nothing to hide. They haven't done anything wrong. What they did not know at the time was that detectives were looking into another lead that they felt pointed them in the direction of Kevin being guilty. A tip had come into the department that around 4 a.m. on Sunday, June 6th, 2004, the night of Riley's disappearance, a dark blue Ford Escape, a vehicle owned by the Foxes, was captured on surveillance at a nearby mobile gas station, which is on the way to Forsyth Woods. The 2020 episode shows a clip of this video, and it's incredibly grainy and difficult to make out what type of car you're looking at. You can't even see like the license plate.
It's honestly difficult to even tell if it's like a four-door sedan or suburban.
Yeah.
Like that, like it is not good. And something from the law enforcement perspective, when it comes to video, if you're not getting like real identifying marks, i.e. a license plate, or like clearly seeing who's in the car, then it's virtually impossible to prove that is the car in question. It can be the same make, model, and color, possibly, but like it's not good evidence to be the linchpin of this investigation. It just isn't.
Well, police are hyper-focused on this video and this car, and the investigation really seems to pick up after this. Another reason the investigation appears to pick up are the external and political influences at play.
What?
Yep. Will County State Attorney Jeffrey Tomzik is up for re-election in a neck-and-neck race against former State Attorney James Glasgow, whom he defeated in 2000. Bringing charges against the individual responsible for Riley Fox's murder could help tip the scales in Tomzik's favor.
Tell me this is all about just getting a fucking conviction.
With his re-election most likely motivating his behavior, Jeffrey Tomzik keeps incredibly close tabs on the Fox investigation and is in close contact with the Will County Sheriff's Department. After months of no progress, the Foxes appear to receive some good news on the evening of October 26, 2004. Detective Scott Swearingen calls Kevin and informs him there have been new developments in the case and that he and Melissa need to come down to the station right away. Kevin, who had just worked a 14-hour shift, is exhausted, but eager to learn about who hurt his little girl and why. As soon as the Foxes arrive to the police station, they are separated. Melissa is taken into a room by Detective Swearingen, and he tells her that Detective Michael Guilfoyle will be in to speak with her shortly. Upon his way out of the room, Detective Swearingen locks the door. Kevin is taken into a small interrogation room and is interrogated by Detective Scott Swearingen, Detective John Rudiger, Detective Michael Guilfoyle, and Detective Edward Hayes. The questions start out easy enough, but soon detectives start applying pressure. They ask Kevin why he chose to call the non-emergency 911 line the day Riley went missing, and why his vehicle is observed around 4 a.m. at a mobile gas station that same day. Kevin again tells detectives that he called the 911 non-emergency line as a way to prevent premature panic.
I mean, it also really doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah.
Like, I can't speak to other departments, but like where I work, the non-emergency line is literally, it's just the phone number for the precinct. So as opposed to getting a 911 dispatcher who will put out the call, you're going to get a police officer who will also just put out the call. Like, it does not change the way things are done.
Yeah. And I also get, his reasoning too, like, not wanting to cause panic, right? Like,
he's not going to jump to my kid's been taken. He's going to jump to, fuck, she fucking
like ran away or something.
She went to go on a little adventure in the yard and she's unsupervised. Like, that's where he's going to want to go.
Yeah. As for the surveillance of his vehicle, Kevin gets snarky with the detectives and says that perhaps someone broke into his home, took his keys, drove his car to the gas station, and later returned it. At this point, Detective Scott Swearingen tells Kevin that they feel he knows more than he is leading detectives to believe he does, and that he is involved. Kevin, shocked by this statement, asks detectives if they are kidding him. He denies any involvement in Riley's disappearance or murder. Kevin allegedly asks for his father and for an attorney. However, detectives tell him that he is 27 years old and doesn't need his father, and seem to ignore his request for an attorney.
I was going to say, that's it. If they say they want an attorney, that's it. Like, that's it. That's it. You can't talk anymore.
Yeah.
Like, they have the right to remain silent, so they don't have to say shit to you, and they have the right to an attorney, so they have the right to representation in the room. You cannot just break the Miranda rights. Like, listen, does it make my job harder? Yeah, it does. But people have fucking civil rights for a reason.
Yeah. Well, they just totally ignored that request. 3 hours into the investigation, Detective Swearingen speaks with Melissa, who has been alone this entire time, just in that room,
3
locked in a
hours.
room. Yeah. He tells her about the video of the car and a statement made by their son, Tyler. So I forgot to mention, after the interrogation of Tyler, Detective Guilfoyle speaks with him. Like, I think he takes him home and he's talking to him, and Tyler says something about Kevin doing laundry in the middle of the night and holding Riley. But later it's investigated that this didn't happen. They have like someone come into the home that can like tell if Kevin was running his wash at the time that it was allegedly running, and it wasn't. So that's just completely thrown out.
Yeah, the kid's also sleeping.
Yeah, exactly. But they, take this statement made after they traumatize this kid. They take this, traumatized statement from him. He then lays out, Detective Swearingen lays out an accident scenario in which Kevin accidentally hits Riley in the head with a bathroom door and panicked when she appeared dead. Kevin duct tapes her mouth, binds her wrists, and sexually assaults her to make it look like she was kidnapped before dumping her in the creek.
What?
Yeah. Like, what horror movie did you just watch where you got that idea from? Because,
Oh no, I just committed an accidental homicide. Let me make it a sexual assault kidnapping. That will look much better.
Like, what?
Like, accidents happen in the home. What the... Who would jump to do that?
Yeah. Melissa is absolutely fuming when she hears this. She informs Swearingen that there is no way Kevin did this. She talks about how he is CPR certified, and if he did accidentally hit Riley with a door to the point where he knocked her out and she appeared dead, he would try to resuscitate her.
I mean, I would assume so.
Yeah. She also explained that she's not a stupid person, and if someone was sexually assaulting her daughter, she would have known about it, as there would have been signs. By midnight, detectives tell Kevin that the only way to prove he is innocent is to take a polygraph test, which Kevin agrees to.
Also, fun fact, and I think we've touched upon this. In the Chris Watts episode. Polygraphs not admissible as court evidence. They are not a perfect science.
Yeah.
So they're a decent investigative tool. You can use them in interesting ways, but they don't definitively do anything one way or the other.
Prior to taking the polygraph around 1 a.m., Kevin is informed by Detective Richard Williams, who will be administering the exam, that if he passes, he will be cleared of his daughter's murder. Should he fail, he will be charged with murder. It takes Kevin about an hour to complete the polygraph test.
I've done these. I've had one of these. Interesting.
When the test is over, Detective Williams informs Kevin that he failed.
Did he fail?
Yes. Well, it's like inconclusive. So Melissa is informed that Kevin has failed the test, and she demands to see the results. She's taken into the same room as Kevin, where Detective Williams shows her a computer screen full of red lines and explains to her, like, see, look at this. This means that he failed. But it's like, you don't know what the fuck you're looking at. Like,
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he could have very well failed. Like, he's tired. He hasn't had anything to eat. He's being told that he...
And once again, they just measure a change in your baseline based on responses. It is not a perfect science, which is why it is not admissible as court evidence. You literally cannot use it.
Yeah. At this point, Melissa knows something is not right. She turns to Kevin, places her hand on his leg, and says, "I believe you." Both Melissa and Kevin state that after this comment is made, Detective Ed Hayes gets in Melissa's face and screams, "Your fucking husband killed your fucking daughter, and he doesn't love you or her." Melissa, visibly shaken and upset, says to him, "Don't you talk like that about my husband and my family." Kevin is taken back into the interrogation room where he is taunted by detectives. They're banging handcuffs on the table, telling Kevin his family doesn't love him. And one detective tells Kevin that he knows people in jail that he could have rape him every day unless he tells detectives what they want to hear.
Okay, so really quick, I just want to pause because things have escalated a lot. Mm-hmm. Right now, snapshot of what's going on. What evidence do they have?
They don't have really any evidence. The evidence that they are the evidence, and I'm using the air quotes, that I'm going off of are the car. That is the number one thing that is driving them. They're suspicious of him calling the non-emergency line. And Tyler's random statement about him waking up and holding Riley while doing laundry at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m, whenever they got home. And now they have this failed polygraph, which I know you're saying it's not court evidence, but they are looking at it like this is all damning info.
I mean, none of that is going to hold up in court. You have a spontaneous utterance from a traumatized child who, by the way, just went through an entire legitimate interrogation, and I'm using legitimate very loosely, and did not yield a single fucking answer that they wanted to hear. You have grainy video that you can't even tell the make or model of the car. Like, this is a joke. This is a fucking joke of an investigation.
Yeah.
And the fact that I'm a cop and I'm willing to say that with my name out there shows how fucked this whole thing is. So just continue.
The most disturbing of all the taunts, however, and this is just fucking awful. And I know that they do this in interrogations, but this is just terrible. One of the detectives shows Kevin a crime scene photo of when Riley was pulled from the creek. She had mud on her face, her mouth is covered in duct tape, and she is nude from the waist down. Detective Guilfoyle turns to Kevin and is quoted as saying, "Riley is in the room with you right now. She's in pain and she needs closure." Kevin is in tears when Detective Swearigan bursts into the room, stating that he just spoke with Jeffrey Tomzik, who says he can cut a deal with Kevin if he acts now. "It's now or never," Swearigan says. "Say it was an accident. Get your help from the state attorney so you can go home to your family. If you pass it up, you will spend the rest of your life in prison. If you say it was an accident, it's involuntary manslaughter with a 3 to 5 year sentence. You'll serve half. Go home now on bond."
That's not what that is. That's not involuntary manslaughter, what they're saying. They're talking about sexually assaulting a corpse and like,
yeah.
There's a lot of crimes they're leaving out.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, they're just trying to break Kevin down and scare him because, he can't be thinking clearly after
Well, he's been in custody how long at this point? It's got to be nearing what? It's got to be double digits, right?
Yeah, almost. He's been in custody since I think they went at 7 p.m. So it's now about 2 or 3 in the morning.
And fun fact, for those wondering, in Illinois, you can be held in police custody, given specific circumstances, for 72 hours without a charge being filed against you. That being said, it can't go over the 72 hours. So that's a long finish line.
At 8:32 a.m., after being up for over 24 hours, having little to eat, and being questioned for 12, Kevin can take no more. He confesses to Riley's murder with the following statement.
Why would he do that?
Well, we'll get into that. He came home at about 1:30 a.m., ate a snack, and then watched television, including an adult video. Around 2:15, he went to the bathroom and swung the door open quickly, striking Riley and knocking her down. The girl appeared lifeless, and Kevin thought she was dead. Panicking, he scooped her up and carried her to his car, retrieving some duct tape from the back. According to the summary, Kevin thought of driving to his mother-in-law's house or perhaps taking Riley to the hospital. Instead, he decided to make her death look like an abduction. He duct taped his daughter's mouth and bound her wrists together with tape. He drove to a bridge over by Forsyth Creek and then carried the girl down a muddy bank, slipping on the way down. Before putting the girl in the water, he inserted his finger inside her to make it look like she had been sexually assaulted. He then went home, cried for a while, and went to sleep. Is that not just the most insane thing you've ever heard? Like that, there's just no logic behind any of that at all.
And they are happy with him signing that.
Yeah, they think...
They're like, this is an absolute win.
Yeah. And Kevin, he talks about how he gave this confession and he was like, this is ridiculous. And like, people are going to see like, wow, this is ridiculous. And it just doesn't happen. And he's like, how are people believing this? And, you know, people often think like, how do you falsely confess to a crime that you didn't do? You do it when you feel like it's your only way out, when it's your only way out of the interrogation room. When it's like, just get me somewhere that isn't here and I'll deal with it after. And in the 2020 interview, Kevin describes it as being in a burning room and there's only one door that you can get out of.
Yeah.
And you go through it.
And you also have to remember, like, they're lying to him. They're telling him, you are going to go to jail for life. You are going to get raped. Like, we have all this evidence. Like, you are fucked. We have you. Or you can take this deal.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, even if he knows 100% he didn't do it, like, do you really want to risk it when what's on the table is your life?
Yeah.
Because guess what? We've seen innocent people get convicted. That shit happens, man.
Yeah. And these are interrogation techniques that are useful in catching killers and people who are guilty, but they're also very good at getting innocent people to confess.
Yeah. And see, in circumstances like this, where you get a false confession, we saw this technique work actually with Chris Watts, where they got a false confession. That opened the door to him admitting that something happened, that he was involved. And then they used forensic evidence to prove part one, that his confession was bullshit. But more importantly, part two, that he fucking did it. It sounds like if they had done their due diligence and processed certain pieces of evidence, that they probably would have been able to, I assume, nullify this confession.
That's the thing.
And then they wouldn't have to work. Like, they would know, okay, he didn't do it. We can focus our investigation elsewhere so we can convict this person, even if it takes a little bit of time to do, even if it doesn't get done in time for, I don't know, an election to happen.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, the same thing with Chris Watts is there were people that came forward to the police that were like, this guy is not acting right.
Yeah.
There was evidence supporting that he was involved.
Yeah.
These
Video
detectives
evidence of his car in his driveway.
Yeah.
not
being pulled
you know.
out and in at a weird way at a weird time. They have a car that you can barely see. Literally, it's so funny. It's like during the 2020 episode, when they talk about how it's a Ford Explorer, I'm like, well, I can't really make it out, but I think it could be a Ford Explorer. And then at the end, when you find out it's a Chevy Beretta, it's like,
oh, you mean that car that everyone said?
Oh, you know what? This actually could be a Chevy Beretta. Like, it just, my opinion of the car, the way I perceived the car changed when I was being told what it was.
Yeah, it's a fucking Rorschach.
Yeah.
You know, it's an ink blot.
And it's just, they are so focused on this evidence that, I mean, nothing else that they have is really standing up. According to Kevin's would-be attorney, Kathleen Zellner, who reviewed the video of the statement, Kevin's responses were vague and halting. Kathleen goes on to state that detectives simply asked him questions to which Kevin responded either yes or no, instead of the typical running narrative often seen in confessions. Kevin's confession also fails to answer several pieces of key information, such as where were Riley's pants and underwear? Why was no duct tape found in Kevin's car? Why weren't Kevin's pants full of mud if he carried her through the mud and then slipped in it? How did a bathroom door strike a child in such a way that she appeared dead? Why was no blood or other DNA evidence found in the Ford Escape?
Yeah, wait a minute.
Also, why would a father who is CPR certified not attempt to resuscitate his child?
Yeah, wait a minute, hold up. Could you, like, interior doors on the inside of people's houses are typically not insulated or even
They're so
heavy.
lightweight, yeah.
Like, you can accidentally, like, trip and punch a hole in them, no problem. Like, don't get me wrong, yeah, I'm sure she'd be hurt. She'd be upset. But to whack a kid with, like, a bathroom door hard enough to kill them on the spot? And also, wait a minute. They have an autopsy. She drowned. We know there's no blunt force trauma, so what the fuck is any of this?
Are
they saying that...
I'm not sure that Kevin and Melissa know her cause of death yet.
No, they might not, but the detectives do. They know that she wasn't killed by blunt force trauma.
Yeah, but I know that... So they're not saying in this accident that she is dead, that he killed her with the door. They're saying he knocked her out. And then he stages this assault and kidnapping while she's still knocked out and then throws her in the creek alive and she drowns. But he doesn't know that she's alive when she's thrown into the creek.
You don't need I know you dropped out of college, but you don't need an education to know if somebody is alive or dead. Typically, there's some signs like breathing or a pulse.
Yeah, it's
is
like
not hard.
It's just terrible. Yeah.
The more this is one of those things that on the surface pisses me off, but the more I think about it as a law enforcement officer, I am getting so mad at how stupid all of this is.
After his confession, Kevin is taken to the Will County Adult Detention Center, where he learns that he is not being charged with involuntary manslaughter, as he was told by detectives, but first-degree murder, which carries a possible sentence of death in Illinois.
First degree?
Yes.
Well, they're not going to get that.
Also, yeah, now that
how the fuck are they going to get premeditation?
Now that I'm even thinking of it, it's like an accident where you think someone is dead, so you discarded that. Like, that's not premeditation. If anything, I don't know. But that's definitely not first degree.
No.
He also learns that he will not be released on bail as previously promised, and that his bail is set to $25 million. As Kevin walks into the jail, he hears someone say, "We caught the baby Riley killer." Kevin glances around to see who this individual is talking about, only to realize it was him. Insane.
The circus begins.
Yep.
The media circus begins.
At this point, Chad has retained criminal defense attorney Kathleen Zellner for his brother.
Can we take a really quick minute? Chad, I'm talking directly to you. I know people probably give you shit for your name. That's just a meme that got out of hand.
Also, his wife is Stacy.
What?
Chad and Stacy. I know.
Elliot. Elliot, get me a glass of orange juice. I'm gonna pour it on these fucking people right now. Right now. No, this guy is like a really good brother.
What a great brother you are, Chad.
Seriously, you're one of the unsung heroes of this entire thing because your direct involvement is paramount to yielding anything resembling a positive outcome. So,
yeah.
Chad, you one of the real ones.
This absolute beast of an attorney is a force to be reckoned with. Kathleen graduated with her law degree from Northern Illinois University College of Law in 1983. In 1991, Kathleen opened her practice, Kathleen T. Zellner and Associates, in Downers Grove, Illinois. Throughout her career, Kathleen has had 21 innocent defendants exonerated, most of them through DNA evidence.
I mean, that's usually pretty
incredible.
Solid DNA.
Currently, Kathleen is representing 2 clients with high-profile cases. Stephen Avery's appeal to his 2007 murder conviction and sentencing, and most recently, like very recent, within the last month, Johnny Depp's defamation lawsuit against Amber Heard.
Oh, yay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a horrible situation, that whole thing.
Yeah, terrible.
How come she still gets to be an Aquaman and he gets canceled? What the fuck is that about?
Don't get me started. I don't know. It's terrible.
And yet Marilyn Manson gets to continue making music. It's a fucked up world, Megan. It's a fucked up world.
Well, he can continue making music. I don't know who's like promoting it or allowing it to play on their platform. I do think he got dropped. Yeah, he did.
Record label. You know, maybe don't sexually assault people.
Yeah, not that hard, guys. Not that hard.
Are you looking at me like I'm supposed to make some kind of joke about hard?
No, because you were looking at me like I knew something.
No.
Oh, okay.
It's like, what kind of awful person do you think I am?
Oh boy. Oh, I lost my little placey. Oh, okay, here we go. After Kevin is taken to the Will County Jail, State Attorney Jeffrey Tomczak, Will County Sheriff Paul Koppas, and other authorities hold a press conference. Sheriff Koppas informs the public that no new information was received by detectives that led them to interrogate Kevin. Here we go. However, they went on a gut feeling in hopes that they would elicit a confession.
That's adorable.
That
it was a gut feeling.
It worked, but not in the right way. Koppas also denies any political motivation.
Fuck off. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go with that.
Yeah, he denies any political motivation.
Zero pressure from Jeff. Jeff had nothing to do with this.
Yep, not at all. 100%.
Jinx.
It's our chemistry.
It's our chemistry. It was really cute, actually. Just a quick aside. We had this a very sweet review on iTunes, and it was like, their chemistry is so good. And I'm like, I fucking hope it is. We're married. It'd be a real bummer if they're like, man, these two have no chemistry.
Well, it's good to know that we sound good together on this podcast. I mean, you do sound like someone that's easy to rob.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I'm just your cuck boyfriend over here. Some of the people, we've had some adorable insults thrown our way. My favorite is when that one guy said that he was upset that Elliot Rodger didn't shoot and kill us.
Yeah. It's like, well, he was in California and we were in New York, so that might have been just one part of the problem.
Why?
Yeah. And again, I wasn't Elliot Rodger's types. I'm a short Hispanic brunette.
That's true.
It's the tall blondes that are the issue. You tall blondes. You
never
gotta
be
stop
caught
with
dead
being
with
tall
you.
and being blonde.
You mudblood. Or whatever. I don't know. Is that Harry Potter? Is it a racial slur?
No. Oh my God.
It's all gotten very confusing. J.K. Rowling's made it very weird.
Throughout his incarceration, Kevin's family stands by his side, declaring his innocence, informing the public that he had been tricked into giving a false confession by detectives.
Which has historically never happened ever.
Yeah, never. The residents of Wilmington, however, seem split down the middle. There are many residents that know Kevin as a kind and loving father, and there are many that are angry that they helped Kevin search for Riley only to find out that he is responsible for her disappearance and death. The Fox family wants to hold a fundraiser to raise money to meet Kevin's bail. However, Kathleen Zellner advises against this. She encourages the Fox family to put the money towards clearing his name. As difficult as this is for them, they take Kathleen's advice and she gets to work.
I mean, there's not much that Kathleen could tell me that I wouldn't do. And it's because I'm afraid of her.
You'd be afraid of her representing you?
No. Just I'm afraid of her as a person. She's got this energy where it's like, I don't know if you're going to try to fuck me or kill me, but you're in control, woman. Whatever you want. What do you want for dinner? I'll go pick it up. Just please don't hurt me and love me.
You better not make her sloppy joes.
No, I would never make her.
She probably wouldn't want sloppy joes.
No,
she'd be very disappointed with that.
That is a fine lady. She gets steak tartare and the non-chunky wine. You get the Hallmark wine.
The Hallmark Channel Christmas wine. On November 2nd, 2004, there is a glimmer of hope for Kevin. James Glasgow, who looks a lot like Stan Lee, and watching the 2020 episode, I was like, is this Stan Lee?
It was weird when he said Excelsior.
Right? But he also looked like Stan Lee. He didn't have sunglasses or anything. He probably doesn't. Most of you are going to watch it and be like, what are you talking about? He looks like Stan Lee to me. Just like that car looks like Kevin's car.
Yeah.
James Glasgow looked like Stan Lee to me. Anyway, on November 2nd, 2004, there is a glimmer of hope for Kevin. James Glasgow defeats Jeffrey Tomczak in the election for state attorney.
Oh,
no.
That's such a shame.
Oh, he brought all these charges against someone and he didn't win anyway.
Well, I guess he'll just, I guess all the charges are dropped because the guy's not here anymore, right? That how that works? Oh, no, it isn't?
Well, although Glasgow seems fair to Zellner, she does not hold her breath in hopes that he will just release Kevin. She hires a private eye, Ernie Rizzo, and his team to reenact the details provided in Kevin's confession to see if they hold up. The first element tested is the placement of Riley's body. Kevin reported that he placed her body in the creek near a bridge, slipping in the mud, making his way down to the water. When investigators placed a 40-pound bag, which was around what Riley weighed, at this location, it failed to float down the creek to the location where Riley was found. There was debris that prevented it from getting there and floating.
And if memory serves, just the actual strength of the current would not have been enough to make a body float.
Well, when they throw the bag off the bridge that's there, it does float to the location where she was found on 2 occasions.
But that also, there you go, that conflicts with his...
what he's saying, right. Next, investigators examined the bathroom door that Kevin allegedly hit Riley in the head with. The door was paper thin and, according to reports, could not cause the damage needed to knock Riley out.
And to prove it, they brought in another 3-year-old girl and spent 45 minutes
just hitting her.
Just slamming the ever-loving Christ out of this kid's head. Not a single dent. Not a single dent on the door or her head.
Yeah, Zellner says, to get the damage that the police were stating this door caused, she would have had to been hit in the head with the hammer.
Just for perspective, I want you to picture striking a human being in the head with a wooden baseball bat, like a solid core wooden baseball bat, right? You thinking about that? All right. Now do that with a wiffle ball bat. That's what that is.
Yeah.
That is the difference between these two things. They're both bats, but one of them's going to do a lot more damage.
Zellner then starts asking about the DNA evidence, an element that seems to have been forgotten during this case.
You know what? It's funny. Completely forgot about that. Whatever happened to that DNA evidence? Because that was, a year ago it was collected almost?
Yeah.
At least 10 months?
So Christmas passes along with Kevin's 28th birthday on January 4th, 2005. He's still incarcerated. Glasgow is showing no signs of having him released, and there does not appear to be much movement made on Riley's case. During a hearing on January 28th, Will County prosecutors turn over several police reports to Kathleen Zellner and her team. Much to their dismay, according to the police reports, it does not appear that there was enough DNA collected to yield a usable profile for a suspect, and the FBI would be returning the DNA evidence within a week. However, unbeknownst to both Zellner and Glasgow, the FBI had not tested Riley's DNA. In a shocking turn of events, it turns out that the day after the election, the FBI received a request from the Will County Sheriff's Office asking them to halt any DNA testing on the Riley Fox murder case. Now, who made this request, might you ask?
I'd love to fucking know.
Well, none other than lead detective himself, Ed Hayes.
Okay. See, right here, with that action, that is where we cross over the line from shitty and incompetent police work to borderline criminal work. This isn't neglect anymore. It's one thing if you just think that this is the guy and no one's going to change your mind and you have tunnel vision and it's this fucking guy and I believe it is him. If they're operating under that, then they want the DNA because they know it's him. Even if they're wrong, they know in their head that it's him, so they know that the DNA is going to prove that, and that's going to get their conviction. For them to say, we don't want the DNA, bury this, someone knew that it wasn't him, and someone was trying to hide it.
Zellner is faced with the difficulty of representing a client who confessed to the murder of his daughter and is being charged with the crime that carries a death penalty sentence with no DNA evidence. DNA evidence is the only way to exonerate Kevin. She begins to comb through the reports and observes an inconclusive finding for the presence of male saliva. Zellner contacts the lab to find out what this means. A forensic scientist informs her that the state crime lab does not have the sophisticated capabilities that is needed to test properly for the substance. With this information, Zellner secures a court order to have the material tested by a private lab, Bode Technology Group in Virginia.
Okay.
The judge orders that the material is sent right away. However, 3 weeks pass and the lab has yet to receive the material.
What?
Yep. On April 5th, 2005, Zellner learns that there was a mix-up and that the material had actually been sent to the state lab, not Virginia, and was then resent to Jolie, Illinois? Someone from Illinois, correct me, please. Now, who is responsible for this mix-up, you might ask?
I'm gonna flip this table, Megan. I swear to God.
Well, according to later reports, none other than lead detective himself, Ed Hayes. You son of a bitch, Ed Hayes. You son of a fucking bitch.
You're getting my wife mad now, Ed.
Yeah. When Bode finally receives the material, they inform Zellner that it will take 2 months for the results, and the chances of finding male saliva in Riley's DNA was slim since there was so little material. On June 8th, 2005, a year and 2 days after Riley's death, Zellner receives a call from Bode. They were able to extract male saliva from Riley's DNA and create a profile. When they compared it against Kevin's DNA profile, to the surprise of absolutely no one, it was not a match. Not even close.
Now, really quick, the kind of DNA evidence that they had would not have been enough to say it matches this person. It matches him 100%. The kind of DNA evidence they had was exclusionatory in nature, meaning they had enough of the DNA to say, we can rule out people. We can take this and say, all right, this is enough for full profile, but if we hold it up against his, based on XYZ, it cannot be him.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened.
Yes.
So he didn't do it.
Nope.
And why did it take them a year and 2 days to do this evidence? Why? Oh, because they were trying to bury it and because they didn't want it to get done. Because it would shit fuck their entire case and then they wouldn't have any leads. Cool. Sounds great. Awesome.
The Fox family is overwhelmed with relief. They wanted Kevin to be released immediately. However, Bode, who was just following protocol, informed them that they would have to wait for the final report. 8 days later, Zellner is waiting by a fax machine in Glasgow's office when the final report makes its way over at about 6 p.m. The next day, Kevin is released from jail. He is greeted by hundreds of friends and family wearing shirts that say test before arrest and 376 days of a killer on the loose.
So really quick, I'm blanking on the guy's name, the new...
Glasgow?
Yeah. What was his input on this? Because he seemed to be a more level-headed person, and he obviously was coming into a situation that was already going. So, like, once this DNA evidence came in, what was his feeling on it?
He was, but I also think he was trying to play both sides a little bit because he knew Kevin didn't do it, but, you know, he didn't want to say that, like, the police were framing him or setting him up. He didn't criticize Tom Zach, but he did talk about how the investigation was handled poorly and there was a mix-up with the DNA in the lab. And, you know, now that this evidence came in, like, there was no way that he could prosecute Kevin or hold him.
So ultimately, it was his
responsible.
decision, right? To drop the charges.
Yes.
Once that... okay, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, you know what? Listen, kudos to him for being one of the only people to fucking do the right thing.
Yeah.
God. And that's the thing that absolutely drives me nuts. It's bad enough that this guy had to sit in a cell for a year getting called a child killer. And not just a child killer, you killed your child and sexually assaulted your child. Yeah. That would be bad enough. It's the fact that the person who did it the whole time was just out there.
Yep.
And every day, the trail gets a little bit colder while they're dicking around trying to make this bullshit charge stick.
Yeah. Although Kevin is grateful to be out of jail and have the charges brought against him dropped, the moment is still bittersweet. His daughter Riley is not there to celebrate with him, and her killer is still on the loose, with no attempts made by police to look for him. While Kevin was still in jail, Zellner filed a lawsuit on behalf of the Foxes in November 2004. In U.S. District Court in Chicago, claiming violation of due process, malicious prosecution, false imprisonment, and defamation. In November, the defendants listed in the lawsuit were Will County detectives Hayes, Swearingen, Guilfoyle, Rudiger, and 2 others. Also added to the lawsuit were polygraph examiner Richard C. Williams, your girl Mary Jane Pluth.
Fuck you.
Sheriff Kappas, and a jail guard. In July 2005, former state attorney Jeffrey Tomczak, who now had a private practice in Jolie, was also added. The defendants have sought to have the claims dismissed, arguing that prosecutors are immune to such claims. A judge rejected all of their arguments with the exception of Sheriff Kappas. Yeah. And also for this trial, something else that's just also very traumatizing for this family, they had to reenact Kevin's interrogation.
Wait a minute, why wouldn't they just, we've seen this countless times. Interrogation rooms have video monitoring for a reason. Why didn't they just use that?
It wasn't videotaped. The initial interrogation was not taped or recorded.
Why not?
I think it has to do with the laws in Idaho. Well, I'm sorry. I think it has to do with the law in Illinois at that time. It wasn't taped or recorded. So Kathleen Zellner hires actors, and they have Melissa and Kevin reenact the night that they're called to the Will County Sheriff's Department. And just can you imagine having to just go over that again?
No.
Even acting, even if it's for, and my little air quotes, your own good, right? To win this case. Just terrible, just absolutely awful. Time passes, and although there are happy moments that fill the Foxes' lives, there is still agony over not knowing what happened to Riley. The town builds a garden by a playground and names it Riley's Garden. In March 2006, Kevin and Melissa welcome their 3rd child, a little girl named Tegan. It's a bittersweet moment, knowing they have been blessed with another daughter, but that Riley would not get the chance to be a big sister. She would have been a great big sister, says Kevin. In December 2007, the federal civil suit that Zellner had filed on behalf of the Foxes comes to a resolution.
I wonder how it shakes out.
A jury found Will County Sheriff's Department detectives guilty.
Wait, what? What? Mm-hmm. That doesn't happen.
Of false arrest and malicious prosecution.
Holy shit.
And awarded $15.5 million to the Fox family. Whoa. They rejected the charge of conspiracy.
Okay. I mean, listen, the fact that, once again, active duty law enforcement officer over here, openly criticizing another agency, not something you're going to see too often, but also these guys did such a bad job. They were literally convicted. That does not happen. That is really black and white. That Jesus Christ.
The amount of money that Melissa and Kevin received was later reduced to $8 million on an appeal. But it's a happy ending for everyone, Paul, because with the exception of one of the detectives who dies, all of them remain on the job, and Jeffrey Tomczak strikes a deal with them before the trial, so he's not even part of it anymore. So everyone wins.
I'm sure he paid out the ass privately to keep his name out of that.
Yeah, do you want to hear something crazy? I didn't put this in my write-up of this, but there's a point where Tomczak says that Kevin was sexually abusing Riley. Like, he had a history of, like, he just, like, pulls it out of his ass. And, like, their pediatrician is on record saying, like, no, that's absolutely not true. There's, like, no signs of that. Just make shit up. Like,
so, really quick, if you just excuse me for a second.
Sure.
Audience, I'm going to give you a little heads up. Language is about to get a little colorful over the next minute, so if that offends you, just hit that little 30-second skip button. But me and Jeffy boy, we gotta have a quick talk. Jeff, you scumbag. Fuck you with everything inside of me. You put political gain over justice. All you wanted was to get that big conviction to distract people from whatever weird fucked up shit was going on legally with your dad so you could get reelected.
your daddy's a felon, Jeff, and everyone knows it.
Apparently, we all know
Some type
it.
of car thing. I think he was also, like, a politician or an attorney and some type of car thing. I forget.
Well,
But he's a felon.
Jeff, you're a bad person. You're a bad person and you're a shitty lawyer. And I'm glad you fucking lost. And guess what? Next to the person who kidnapped, murdered, and raped a child, you're the second worst person in this story. Think about how shitty you are that the second worst person in this story is you. So, there you go. You enjoy that. Back to you, Megan.
In June 2009, the FBI sends a team to Wilmington to investigate the Riley Fox case at the urging of James Glasgow.
Wait, the FBI?
Yes. James Glasgow calls the FBI.
Wait a minute, you said 2009?
Yes,
How many fucking years has it been?
Since she's passed?
Yeah.
5.
This thing has just been cold for essentially 4 years.
Yeah.
How are they going to find this guy or girl?
Well, that's why James Glasgow is calling in the FBI, and they at first they don't want to take it. And then a special agent, Lori Warren, who had been following the case, she like urges them. She's like, please send me here. Please send a team here. Like, we have to.
Lori.
Warren.
I thought you said Lori Warren.
Lori Warren?
What was her name?
Lori Warren. What are you?
I said Lori, and then you said Warren. I was calling her by her first name.
Oh, I thought you were asking me what her last name was.
No, I was just saying, Lori's the shit.
Okay.
Another hero of this story.
Yes.
Also, Glasgow, once again, tip of the cap to you for doing the right thing and calling it out.
You know what?
For doing your job.
For doing your job. That's the thing. He's
That's
not
how
going
sad it
above
is.
or beyond.
No.
He is just doing his job, and we're like, wow, he's extraordinary.
Yeah, because his predecessor was a piece of shit.
Oh, my God. So Lori, who has been following this case, begs to be sent to Wilmington. She begs the FBI to send agents with her, and they agree. So the FBI deploys about 30 agents to Wilmington, and they start knocking on doors and interviewing the residents.
That's a novel idea. I wonder if they could find any interesting information about that night, like perhaps if the neighbor had been burglarized.
One resident who asked that her name not be provided, so we're going to refer to her as Mary. Mary, our friend from the Facebook group. Mary, you're going to be one of the heroes of this story today.
Congrats.
Good for you. Mary informs the FBI that she feels she knows someone who is involved, but she only has a gut feeling and she doesn't really have any evidence to support
but we
this.
went over this. Gut feelings ain't enough. Gotta look into it more.
Mary informs investigators that during the summer of Riley's disappearance, she was dating 33-year-old Scott Eby, whom she described as a creep and not a good person.
Oh.
Well,
Don't hold back, Mayor.
Mary informed the FBI that Scott had been living with his mother in Wilmington in 2004. One afternoon, Mary was walking with Scott and his mother through Riley's garden. Mary reports saying something to the effect of, "I can't believe somebody did that to that poor little girl." Scott turns to Mary and says, "Oh, that was such a shame, wasn't it?" The way Scott made this statement, according to Mary, was cold and void of all emotion, sending chills down her spine. Mary says she has not been able to get it out of her head since.
Okay, that is actually more of a legitimate gut reaction / gut feel. Okay, I buy that a little bit. That's weird.
Yeah.
Like, that's actually weird.
It is. And I mean...
And for her to remember that X amount of years later.
Yeah, that it's haunted her since he said that. And, you know, the FBI, they have nothing to go on yet. There's literally been no leads except for Kevin. So, you know, at this point, it's like, why not look into this? So Mary informs the FBI that Scott is currently incarcerated in Southern Illinois for the sexual assault of a family member.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, that's an unfortunate coincidence.
2 FBI agents, so Agent Lori Warren and her partner Jeremy Razar, make their way to Southern Illinois and surprise Scott with a visit. Scott is cooperative and pleasant to speak with, but denies any involvement and informed the FBI investigators that he is aware of his whereabouts on the day and that he is not involved. As the agents leave, Lori shakes his hand. She turns to Jeremy on the way out and says, "That is the clammiest hand I have ever shaken."
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just unpleasant.
After the agents leave, Scott makes a call to his mother, urging her to come down and see him so he can hug her and kiss her one last time.
What?
Scott admits to doing something really, really bad. And after his mother pushes him to tell her what happened, Scott opens up.
What'd he do?
On May 18th, 2010, Scott attempts suicide while in prison. Before his attempt, he writes a note addressed to the 2 FBI agents, so Lori Warren and Jeremy Razar, that visited him. In the note, he confesses to the kidnapping, sexual assault, and murder of Riley Fox.
Shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
And nobody tortured him for 14 hours to get it? He just confessed all on his own?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Scott was unsuccessful in his suicide attempt. He agrees to meet with the FBI agents. Upon their arrival, Scott asks for a lawyer.
Well, that's annoying. Why would he?
Yeah. So, you know, they leave. However,
I'm not gonna lie. If I was one of them, I'd be pissed.
Yeah. No, really. You just got all the
fucking
way
dragged
there.
me out here because I'm here because you wanted to talk, and now you're like, lawyer? Like, come on, dude.
Yeah. Well, moments later, Scott recants his request for a lawyer and says he's changed his mind and he'll talk to the agents. Scott gives the following statement. Late on June 5th, Scott was drinking and doing cocaine.
Uppers and downers.
Mm-hmm. He gets the desire to break into people's homes and rob them, which, according to him, is something he just does. It's a hobby. He drives into the area where the Foxes live. He steals $40 from their neighbor across the street after breaking into her home by cutting the screen in her window.
Oh, yeah, she mentioned that.
Yep.
Several years ago.
So after he takes the $40, he makes his way over to the Fox's house. He gets in through the back door.
No, Megan.
Since the lock is broken.
Megan, we have established this. The sheriff's office said there was no sign of forced entry. That's why it had to be the dad.
No, but you don't have to force yourself into an open... You don't have to force yourself into a house if there's a broken lock.
But how did he get in if he didn't force entry, Megan?
Well, he just opened the door.
That is making crazy sense to me.
He looks around the Fox's home and finds nothing of value to steal. On his way out, he notices Riley and Tyler sleeping in the living room. Scott then states, for some reason, I fixated on that little girl. Once he decided to abduct Riley, he goes outside and backs his red Chevy Beretta into the Fox's driveway. From the house, he puts Riley in his trunk.
Wait a minute. A red Chevy Beretta? Isn't that like the exact make, model, and color car that multiple people reported seeing that they thought was suspicious on the night that Riley disappeared and the burglary happened?
Yes. Do you also want to know what else it is? It's also the car caught on the surveillance camera at the mobile gas station because Scott says, yes, I did stop there.
So what you're saying is the sheriff's department was right.
There was a car caught on surveillance.
And they should have been looking into that car.
They should have been looking into that car.
But listen, have you ever looked at a red Chevy Beretta next to a Jeep Grand Cherokee? They're fucking identical.
I don't even know what a red Chevy Beretta looks like. From the house, He puts Riley into his trunk and takes her to Forsyth Woods, where he sexually assaults her in a bathroom on the property. Now, mind you, this bathroom was never checked for any evidence at all.
I guess they never even...
During the investigation. Yeah. It was just completely overlooked.
They just never knew about it.
Scott is wearing a mask, which ends up falling down and exposing his face to Riley. At that moment, Scott decides he must kill Riley.
Man, cocaine is a hell of a drug.
Can you imagine thinking like a 3-year-old
is going to remember any of this?
Not only that, but like be able to ID you.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, you just traumatized the ever-loving shit out of her. You think she's going to be able to give a cogent statement after this?
Yeah.
Fuck's wrong with you?
The most heartbreaking detail Scott provides are Riley's last words. As he approaches the creek with her, she says, "I want my daddy." So the man that is accused of killing her is the one that she's actually calling out for to help her in her final moments.
That is the worst fucking thing ever.
Oh my God, it's just so terrible. Ugh. Scott discusses taking off his white high-top Rydell sneakers and throwing them in the creek.
Wait, the sneakers?
Yeah, that he wore. Oh yes, the sneakers. The sneakers that...
Wait, what were the fucking letters on the sneaker?
EBY.
Oh my God, it wasn't initials.
Do you want to know the craziest thing too? Scott, during this investigation, is just like, yeah, I thought like my name in the shoe was going to give me away.
It was literally his last name.
He says I was ready to like have people come talk to me like days after this. And Melissa says the only time she was questioned about a shoe, she had no idea that sneakers were found. She like asked...
Yeah, what did they ever do with them?
They asked her what size shoe Kevin was.
And it matched?
No, it didn't. So they never brought it up again.
They had physical evidence.
That didn't corroborate with their story, so they just, nope.
Yeah, that's not how an investigation works. You don't just get to pick and choose. Oh my God, fuck these people.
Yeah. The morning after Riley's murder, or later in the day, I should say, since this was the early morning, Scott Eby makes a suicide attempt by ingesting oxycodone. Here's more rage for you guys, because this case isn't filled with enough rage.
This is the morning?
So this is June 6th, like around 8 a.m.
Okay.
The police arrive to Eby's home after a concerned friend contacts them.
Wait, the police or the sheriff department?
The police.
The police. Okay.
The police arrive to Eby's home after a concerned friend contacts them. As Scott is vomiting, he asks police if they found that little girl Riley Fox yet. Police apparently think nothing of this, nor do they run Scott's name in their system. It's like, I'm sorry. I'm not a cop. I don't know the work or the line of thinking. But if there is a grown-ass man vomiting in the middle of a suicide attempt and asking where a missing child is, like they have the wherewithal to ask like about a current event happening in the town, that's not a red flag. That's not something you think like, that's strange or that's odd or I'm going to make a note of this or I'm going to run this man's name in the system.
Listen, I get it. You show up to a mental aided and you're not trying to make it into something more than that. But how do you not at least think, you know what? Let me do, we call it a field interview where I am, where if you have a gut feeling something weird is going on, but you can't prove anything, you just document the person, their info, the time, the location, and the circumstances of what is going on. So there is a paper trail of the incident. That way, like if at a later date you find out a crime happened right around there that matches, you can kind of put the pieces together. It's just so insane that nobody heard that and thought anything of it.
How? And like I said earlier, the news of her disappearance spread rapidly that day. Like everybody in Wilmington was looking for her. Like it's a quiet village. God damn it. Everybody was looking for her. So I find it very hard to believe that like the police didn't know what he was talking about. Like, okay. In November 2010, Scott Eby pleads guilty to first-degree murder and predatory sexual assault. He is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Melissa and Kevin, they did not want him to receive the death penalty. They didn't want him to receive the easy way out. They want him to suffer like Riley suffered. Prior to his sentencing, Melissa and Kevin are able to make victim, impact statements. In a letter that they write to Scott, they call him a coward and a monster for taking away a beautiful, defenseless little girl from this world. Kevin says to Scott, "I would always wonder what you were doing with your freedom, if you were lying, watching TV, or if you were picking your next victim. After today, you will no longer be a part of my memories of my daughter." Although finding Riley's killer brought some closure, there is still a hole in the hearts of the Fox family that will be with them for life. Unfortunately, the death of their daughter and the chaos that was the investigation of her murder was too much for the marriage to withstand, and they ended up getting a divorce.
Oh, God damn it.
I know.
Why does that happen?
We'll talk about it. Both Melissa and Kevin have remarried and have wonderful families. They remain close and supportive of one another. Not much is known about their current whereabouts, as they like to stay out of the public eye, which
who can fucking blame them?
Totally understandable. I get it. And so to answer your question, Paul, why do marriages end after something like this?
Because we saw this happen with Peyton, with the Leitner family.
Yeah.
I was about to say we saw this with the Watts family. Jesus Christ. Can you tell I'm fucking tired?
Jeez. I mean, yeah, you see Melissa and Kevin as this united front throughout this whole ordeal, and then...
And they even have another kid.
Yeah. And then you find out they get divorced, and you're just like, oh, so why does this happen? And I mean, the short answer is trauma. You have just been through an incredibly traumatic, multiple traumatic events.
Yeah, this goes way beyond
the loss of their
thing.
child. Yeah. Trauma affects us all differently, and what we find traumatic varies from person to person.
Yeah, I can appreciate that.
Yeah, and, even if Kevin and Melissa wanted to work on their marriage, which it very much seemed like they did, Riley's death changed the dynamic of their family forever. And also, Kevin being incarcerated for a crime he didn't commit for 8 months, I can imagine also changes the dynamic because, you're institutionalized for a little bit there. Like, you're just on survival mode.
I mean, especially it'd be one thing if he was like in there and he was like the charge was a burglary or like a cool crime. No, you're in there for being a fucking child killer.
You're in there for the worst thing ever.
They do not do well there.
Yeah.
They just, and you know what, nor should they.
Yeah. And he, kept a journal while he was incarcerated. And I think he talked about being, there were days where he was suicidal, but he knew that he was innocent and that he was going to get back with his family at some point. But it's still hard coming out of that. And, there are still people that didn't believe him, as there always are. No matter how much evidence you throw in their face, they just want to believe what they want. And that's it.
I told you I don't want to get political. Stop giving me these low-hanging fruit jokes for me to make.
I'm not making a joke. I am just saying this. He talks about this being his experience where, they convicted Scott Eby and people are still calling him Baby Riley Killer. And it's like, what? And it's hard because you're going through your own emotions and trying to make sense of it all. And then you have your partner's emotions that they're going through and trying to make sense of it all. And then you have children that you have to
be united,
take care of
and
and be strong for. And it's exhausting. It's exhausting. And also when you go through something like this, the person that you go through this scenario with can be triggering.
That's the one thing that was going to be my takeaway is like, how is your partner not a constant reminder of what you lost?
Yeah.
And like the worst thing that could have ever happened to you is just there every day when you go down to have breakfast or when you go to drop the kids off at school. It's just constantly there. It makes sense. It's really sad, but it makes sense.
You look at them and you see your daughter. It's awful. And, you know, they had the other baby, Tegan, and, you know, a lot of times people will try to have a baby to make a relationship work. And I'm not saying that that's what they did, but, you know, as a way to like bring some happiness to kind of tie the family
Back
together.
Yeah.
But, you know, having a baby can also be, as we know, very overwhelming.
I don't know what you're talking about. What? Why are you looking at me?
And so it doesn't surprise me that after all was said and done, where there was closure, right? They knew who killed Riley and what happened.
Yeah, and definitively, too.
Yes.
It wasn't like a contentious victory. It was no, I did this.
Yeah. And, you know, Kevin was freed and they were, you know, paid accordingly. It's also kind of like, well, now what do we have to work on? Now we have to focus on our relationship. Now we have to focus on, you know, there's only so much anger we can have towards Scott, Abby. There's only so much anger we can hold towards the sheriff's department. Like now the focus is on how do we continue with this relationship.
You're also switching over from very goal-oriented, like end game things where there's a timeline. We can achieve this. We did it. We've succeeded. We're going to move on to the next thing. We won that. We did that. And then just to go into, well, now what? Now it's just maintenance. We just have to do maintenance on this thing forever. But when does it get better? And it's like, the answer is it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's just, you're just going to work on this forever with your partner. And that I can see why that's hard for some people.
I also think that after all this is over, they're just now faced with their guilt, right? Their guilt of...
Why did I leave her in the living room?
Well, not
Why
so,
didn't I leave her at my parents' house?
I mean,
but I'm sure he's thinking that.
Not so much that.
No?
No, I mean, not so much that. I mean, I think that plays a role, but more so like we want to be happy and our baby is gone. We want to move forward. How do we move forward and live happy lives when our daughter so unfairly died?
You know what they need to do? Reach out to Casey Anthony, because that bitch is having the fucking time of her life.
No.
Killer's still out there, guys. Killer's still out there.
Yeah, you could tell she's innocent because of how much she advocates to find the reason, the killer for her baby.
Yeah, you want to know if somebody is wrongly convicted or wrongly let go? Look and see how much they're trying to find the real killer when all is said and done.
Yeah.
The fact that from the goddamn jail, he was like, the killer's out there, like, you guys still need to keep working on this. That speaks volumes.
Yeah, it speaks volumes.
Chris Watts wasn't concerned with finding the fucking killer.
No, he was like, oh crap, I have to act concerned about finding the killer. I just hope the person
who did this
comes forward and that my family is safe. I just hope that happens.
I hate so many of these people, Megan.
I know. It's just, it's absolutely, this case is just heartbreaking. And, you know, I was actually trying to find studies on like the psychological effects of being wrongfully accused. And there really aren't any, which shocked me. There's not enough data that's been collected.
I guess it makes sense because when you think about it, how often does it really happen? It can't be more than like, I would hope a couple hundred times.
I don't know. I'm terrible with numbers, but you know, just...
But it's crazy that we were able to find the that French thing with the fucking Slender Girls.
The Folie Deux?
Yeah. Oh, there's a study on that.
Oh, well, that's a case study. That's different. That's one, you know, you follow one person that's had this. This is, okay. You know, you want to make a generalization about people who have been wrongfully accused.
Talking to, she's smart.
You know, I can imagine that Kevin probably has maybe to some degree like PTSD or depression or anxiety. Like those are things I'd imagine being wrongly accused of murdering and sexually assaulting your baby.
Yeah.
That is part of it.
No, I could see that being part of it.
And this is just, this case is just so heartbreaking, and I had to read about it and watch it so many times, and it just didn't get any easier. And not that I was expecting it to, but it's just like, damn, like just how did all of this happen to this family? Melissa has said that even though she went through such a horrible tragedy, because she went through such a horrible tragedy, she can actually really see like the good and the light in the world now. And so that doesn't mean that she doesn't wish Riley could still be here with her, but it does allow her to kind of focus on the good and to live a happy life, like as happy as one could when your child is taken from you. And Riley's birthday is coming up on March 31st. I think she would have been 21.
Holy shit.
Right? 2001. What year are we? 2002? 22?
Yeah, she
Is that 21?
Yeah, she would have been 21.
So it's just like, they want her to be remembered as this sassy, fun little girl who loved her dad and loved to catch butterflies and loved her brother. And, I hope that they get to carry, a piece of Riley with them in their hearts every day. And I hope that they're able to just think about her life as opposed to just thinking about the tragic circumstances that surround her death.
Yeah.
Now, the real question, should Scott Ebby be released?
No.
Abso-fucking-lutely
No, I thought he was.
not. I know.
I thought
no,
no
I'm kidding.
parole. Yeah,
no,
fuck no.
Are you kidding? Absolutely not.
So what was his excuse for doing this? Was he? I got the vibe he was blaming it on the coke and the beer.
Oh, a lot of people do that. As someone who has worked with people who abuse those substances, I have not met one person that has done so and that has abducted a child and assaulted them and then killed them.
Yeah.
That has never been something that I've heard.
Yeah. Listen, I have consumed a sacrilegious amount of absinthe on the streets of Paris with one Nick Levanti many moons ago. You don't get much more hardcore than that. Maybe moonshine, but you don't get much more hardcore with that than booze. And it's like, I don't know, man. I don't think there's any substance you could give me that would make me think, what's going to spice this evening up? A child abduction. It's just, it's such
Here's
bullshit.
the thing.
Such a cop out.
I mean, he blames them like, you don't have anything nice enough to take, so now I'm going to fixate on your kid. Like, no, you're a sexual predator.
Yeah.
And you were looking for a fucking easy target, and you found one in a 3-year-old. You disgusting pig of a person. I have so many mixed feelings about the death penalty, but you deserve to be fucking dust, Scott Ebby. You don't deserve a place in this world. And, I want to go with the Fox family wishes, right? If it's their wish for him to suffer, then that's my wish for him too. But wow, what an actual waste of a human being you are to do this to a sweet,
and
innocent
originally,
baby.
I didn't realize that he was in jail for a different unrelated sexual assault. But
Yeah. So you didn't learn.
Yeah, part of me wondered, was this a one-time deal? Because I feel like it usually isn't.
No.
But I was wondering, like, is he going to reoffend? Because my gut is he is. And, there was your answer. He did reoffend.
Yeah. It's like, on this podcast, we always talk about, like, who would be an actual, like, danger to society and who should be
Who could
released,
be rehabilitated?
And it's like, I've said, Chris Watts could be rehabilitated. I don't think he'd be a threat. I don't think he fucking deserves to be out ever.
Just because we can fix it doesn't mean we're gonna.
That, or just because you can be fixed doesn't mean like you deserve a second chance after what you did.
Yeah.
So, no. I think we like talk shit about Chris Watts every episode. We like bring him in. We're like, just fuck Chris Watts.
Yeah, because no one's gonna be like, hey.
Yeah.
That's not cool. I am shocked at how many Elliot Rodger defenders that we get wishing us death and all that fun stuff.
My God, guys, Elliot Rodgers was not a good person either.
No.
Stop it.
Yeah. And you know what? I'll give this point to you guys. Elliot Rodgers was a shit person separate of him being an incel. He is not a bad person because he's an incel.
Yes, that's
He
correct.
was an incel and a monster. I'm sorry. He was a bad person and a monster who happened to be a incel. So, in case anyone thought that, we were saying that all incels are bad, obviously that's not the case.
Yeah. So, do you have any final thoughts on this case?
I honestly think I peppered them in throughout. tunnel vision can be a thing where you get very hyper-focused on, this is what it has to be. My gut is telling me it's this. But you can go with intuition. You can go with your gut instinct. And lots of amazing detectives do that. I'm fortunate that I'm friendly with some truly incredible detectives. But what makes them incredible detectives is that they will follow the evidence, because your gut can only take you so far. And when your gut starts to get contradicted by evidence, you're not a good detective if you just say, well, fuck the evidence then. I have a sneaking suspicion this is what happened. No, you have to be willing to change and adapt, and you have to be willing to look at the totality of the evidence and be like, okay, like, what really happened? Because it's not about validating your ego that you fucking called it from the beginning. Congratulations. It's about getting justice, and it is about finding the truth. And even if you were wrong initially, that shouldn't matter.
Yeah.
Because it's not about you. It's about the victims.
Yeah. And I mean, just especially in a case like this where it's a child, and like you see, like, this department went into their homes and spent time with these people to the point where they thought like they're being friends. They really care. They really want to see how we're doing. You know that they weren't acting suspicious where there was reason to think that Kevin was involved.
Listen, this whole thing it stinks of political pressure. And that's why politics shouldn't be so entrenched in policing.
No.
I know that that's just an unfortunate reality of what happens, but the things should be kept separate and impartial, because this is what happens when somebody has something to gain by a conviction happening, regardless as to whether or not the person actually did it. You just need the number. You need the win. You need the headline. You need the press conferences. It's really... Don't be the mayor from Jaws.
Oh, God.
Be fucking Sheriff Brody.
That's right, guys. My favorite movie.
Yeah. Don't be the mayor from Jaws.
We're sorry for this very heavy podcast today. We'd love to hear your feedback on the case. We'll post all the links to the articles and the 2020
all of our sources will be in the notes as always. Whoa, this is going to be one of our longest episodes. Yeah. Holy shit. Well, there you go, guys. You had to wait an extra week, but you're getting probably double the amount of content that you would have gotten if we had recorded last week. Megan, I'm trying to think. The cases you've presented thus far. You did Cindy White. You did Elliot Rogers. You basically did the second half of the Slender Man case with the amount of psych stuff there was, and then you just did this. Sorry that you have to keep doing all these really heavy, sad ones, but thank you for being a great co-host and presenting them so well.
Thank you, honey, and thank you for
if you bring up the fucking sloppy joes.
No, I'm not. Thank you for continuing to push me to, do my research and type, because I am not great at those things.
I'm actually shocked at how much you wrote for this.
I had so many feelings, and I hope I did a good job of presenting it.
Yeah.
I hope I didn't leave. I don't think I really left anything.
No, I think it was, we'll see if anyone picked up on you crying at the end.
Stop it.
But I think that is it. I think that's all we have for today.
Until next time.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Paul Danino Braun.
And I'm Megan Braun. And remember, murderites, never go to a second location. This is
The Origins of Evil.